My name is Kelsey Trudell. I'm the Executive Director of Sustainable Saratoga. We're a local nonprofit organization promoting sustainable practices through education, advocacy, and action. Welcome to the Year of No Garbage book event. We're excited to be co-hosting this and offering this all to you all. First of all, I'd like to thank Skidmore College for hosting. Thank you to Ann Ernst for setting this room up for us. Thank you to Northshire Bookstore. They have a table out front where you can buy Eve's book. And thank you to Skyhorse Publishing for reaching out to me to arrange this event. Eve Schaub is a published author and speaker who writes stunt memoirs to illuminate the ills of contemporary society in a relatable and engaging way. A graduate of Cornell University and the Rochester Institute of Technology, she lives in Vermont with her family and an ever-fluctuating number of chickens. Her first book, Year of No Sugar, enjoyed international attention, including coverage on the Dr. Oz Show, USA Today, the Huffington Post, and the New York Daily News, among others. In it, she convinces her 2 young children and husband to eat no added sugar for a year. In her second book, Year of No Clutter, she explores her hoarding tendencies and tries to understand and undo them. In Year of No Garbage, Eve tackles her most difficult challenge to date. Convincing her husband and 2 daughters to go along with her, Eve attempts the seemingly impossible, living in the modern world without creating any trash at all for an entire year. Please help me in welcoming our speaker, Eve Schaub.
Thank you, Kelsey. And thank you. You stole my thunder because I was going to thank Saratoga. Thank you to Northshire Bookstore. Thank you to Skidmore. Thank you to everyone. And thank you to you for coming out tonight on this dark, chilly November evening. I appreciate you. And in fitting with the time of year and the darkness and the chill in the air, I'm going to tell you a scary story. This is obviously me. This is also me. These are my other 2 books, about which you've heard a little bit. And this is my wonderful family. And I feel like I invented a job for myself. As a writer, I perform experiments on my family so that I can write about it. They are long-suffering and wonderful people, and I had to promise them that this was the last one. It all goes back for me, in the genesis of this particular book, to when I was a little kid, and I was watching Sesame Street, and I was obsessed with Oscar the Grouch. You know, he's all the things that little kids are not supposed to be. He's mean, he's nasty, he's rude, he loves trash, and he keeps all of it. And I thought he was great. And yet, he sang a song about loving trash, and the song didn't sound at all. The things he talked about were like broken musical instruments and sneakers that had holes in them. And I was like, well, that doesn't sound like our trash in our household. In our household, we had one big black bag that was under the kitchen sink, and everything went into it. You know, this is the 1970s. We didn't have recycling of any sort where we lived. We had never heard of compost. And so organic material, glass, metal, paper, you name it, everything we were done with went into that big black bag. And I remember being a little kid looking into that big black bag, knowing that bag was going to end up once a week. It would always get carted out to the end of the driveway and then get picked up and go somewhere else. And I wondered, what happens next? And I wondered if it was anything good. Fast forward, many decades later, not too many, a couple, and I'm living in Vermont. And I've learned a whole lot about the environment. I consider myself to be someone who tries to be a responsible citizen of the planet, who tries to be mindful of my impact. I have now gone through many iterations of different kinds of recycling. I now have a single stream recycling provider who picks up my giant bin, 96-gallon container filled with recycling every week. On top of that, I shop locally, I go to the farmer's market, I have a compost pile in my backyard, and I bring my bags to the grocery store most of the time. So I think to myself, I see these zero waste social media influencers, and I think, how hard would it be to just take that extra step forward and really have no garbage at all? And that's when I get my truly terrible idea. And I present it to my family. I say, I have this terrific idea. Why don't we try not throwing anything away for an entire calendar year? January 1, we start. And the idea, I conceived of it as sort of a Super Size Me meets the environmental movement. I mean, all of the people you see here are people who I adore. I love the stunt project. I mean, I love that when I write a stunt novel, memoir, I get to be a stunt person. This is the only universe in which I will ever be a stunt person. And I have this idea. You might gather this about me, I'm a very optimistic person and I'm a very stubborn person. So this is like the perfect combination to attempt this very challenging idea. And I have this idea that there really was no such thing as garbage, right? Because garbage it's a matter of context. Like, garbage is the stuff we're done with, but there's no one thing you can point to and say that inherently is garbage, right? It's kind of like a weed is just a plant that's growing somewhere that you don't want it to be. So my idea was, if I could just take things that normally would be considered garbage and get them to the right places and the right people who would appreciate them, and good things could happen with them, that this would be the solution to living without any garbage at all. So here we are on the very last day of 2019. Yes, 2020 would be our year of no garbage. It did not turn out to be the year, like for so many people, it did not turn out to be the year we expected it to be. We'll talk about that a little bit more later. Here we are joyfully employing our trash, our 96-gallon wheeled container that so many people are familiar with, filling it up and taking it out on the very last day of the year. And the rules for this project were very simple. I'm a very literal person. I like things very defined. We could recycle, we could compost, we could repurpose, we could give it away. But we could not put anything in an actual trash that would go to a landfill or to an incinerator. So we took that 96-gallon bin that before this point we had religiously filled up and carted out to the end of our driveway every single week, and we put it in the corner of our garage where it sat sad and lonely for the entire rest of the year. And I thought, how hard could it really be, right? I've already got all of these resources at my disposal. Recycling and our awareness has come so far since I was a kid and we just had that one black bag. And not only that, but my single stream service provider for recycling collected all 7 kinds of plastic, right? You know, that's the resin identification code that's in the chasing arrows triangle. That's on so much of the plastic packaging that we all bring into our homes practically every day. And I thought, well, that's got to be most of it, right? So chapter 1 is entitled, "This Sucks and Everyone Hates Me," which gives you an indication of how incredibly easy it was right away. Immediately, I was confronted with 1,000 things that I no longer could dispose of, but I didn't entirely know what they really were. You know, I thought I was a fairly, I knew what materials were, I knew what things were made of, and suddenly I was confronted with things like potato chip bags and milk cartons and wipes for things like cleaning or makeup. And I didn't know what exactly these things were made of. And they were all conundrums, each and every one. So I started a pile. It started out very small, as you can see here. I called this pile of stuff I don't know what to do with. I called it the Super Awesome Recycling Center, and I stuck it first on the kitchen counter and then in the corner of my kitchen. And I said, this stuff is just in limbo. It's in a holding pattern until I can figure out where to get it, where something good will happen to it. And I very quickly started accumulating more and more. And then the piles would start to slide onto the floor. And I would reorganize. I would, double down. And then here's my daughter helping me with some more organizing and more sorting. If I could just get a really good system in place, I could do this. Here I am, completely overwhelmed. But my process was pretty straightforward and consistent for the entire year. Everything that we normally would have unthinkingly tossed into a trash can instead had to go to the sink, be washed, and carefully dried. Things like Ziploc bags, things like saran wrap and tin foil, potato chip bags, everything. Everything got washed and carefully dried. And we started out with the things that you would think of first. We started cold turkey. We did not prepare. That's how I do all my projects. It's much more painful that way. And we started out with all the stuff that you would normally think of. Like we traded in our disposable products for durable ones. So the Kleenex was gone, and instead we used hangings. We started using cloth for presents or paper that could also be recycled. We also, ditched the paper towels and stopped purchasing them in favor of reusables. We also started shopping more locally, because those were the places that were more likely to accommodate special requests. Like, gee, could I get my cheese in paper? Can I bring my own bag for the bread? And of course, our single-stream recycling bin became pivotal, right? It was putting in overtime. And whereas before, I kind of paid attention, and now I was obsessed. I knew the rules and everything that they would accept. I knew about it, and it went in there. And then we graduate to sort of what I call the intermediate level. We had a compost pile already, but now we were using it much more faithfully. There were no oh, the compost bucket is full and it's raining. No, too bad. Hair from our hairbrushes. Any other organic material. If there was something so gross that we just had to use a paper towel, we have pets. You take that paper towel, that can go in the compost. Also, things like pizza boxes. You can't recycle those because they've got food grease, but you can put them in your compost pile. Also, posting things. Remember, I talked about giving things away. So I was starting to accumulate a really strange number of collections. Like I had a whole bunch of wine corks, and I had a whole bunch of plastic bottle caps, and I had rubber bands and twisty ties, and all these things that came on our produce, and what am I going to do with this stuff? So I'd collect a whole bunch of them, and then I'd put a post on an online message board, and I'd say, does anybody want 200 twisty ties? Somebody always did. It was quite amazing. We also then graduated to what I call extreme recycling, because it just wasn't enough. And I had this pile in the kitchen, and my husband was coming in going, we still need to cook. And this thing here in the corner is more akin to Krakatoa than the recycling center you had envisioned. So I said, okay, extreme recycling, here we go. What else is out there that I don't already know about? And I found out more about the plastic film recycling bin that's at the supermarket, which many people are already familiar with. You can take the plastic bags, the plastic film bags that they give you at the store, and those can go in there. But what I didn't know is that there's a whole lot of other stuff that they also accept. Plastic film encompasses a lot of things. Bread bags, ice bags, bubble wrap, Ziploc bags. All of those things, dry cleaning bags, can all go in that bin. And they say they will take it and do something good with it. Then I got further in on the extreme recycling, and I discovered the Carton Council, which is an industry organization. If you have cleaned and dried your cartons, whether they are gable top or aseptic, They can be put in a box, and then you pay to mail those cartons to one of 4 different locations around the United States. I'm not sure how sustainable that is or scalable, but it was a solution, and we were desperate. And then I happened upon pay-to-play recycling, which is just out and out. I'll pay you a huge pile of money, and you will send me a box, and I will fill it up, and you will promise me you will do something wonderful with whatever I put in that box. And TerraCycle, which is based in New Jersey, is that company. They say that they can recycle just about anything, and that includes everything you can imagine except for maybe used diapers and toxic waste. But there are so many things in the world that I realized don't necessarily scream plastic, but are plastic. We're surrounded by plastic. This room, we're surrounded by plastic. Look, everything you look at has plastic as a component. Did you know that receipts are made with plastic? Did you know dental floss, wipes, every kind of wipe you could possibly imagine, personal wipes, makeup wipes, cleaning wipes, cigarette filters, which shocks me because then you're taking the plastic and you're heating it and breathing through it. That doesn't strike me as a great plan. But tampons, not just the applicator, not just the packaging, the actual tampon itself, plastic in that. Tea bags. Any kind of leather that's not leather, faux leather, vegan leather. It's all plastic. You're wearing plastic, yoga pants, nail polish, and pavement. So the rule number 1 of Year of No Garbage was that plastic is Darth Vader. And if you don't know what something is, it's always plastic, always, always, always. It might be plastic that has been scientifically smooshed together with paper, or paper and aluminum, or a whole host of other things. And they are so well combined that they are never coming apart. It is not going to be in anybody's best interest. It's not going to be cost effective. It's not going to be practical to separate them. So they're married forever, which makes turning it into something else virtually impossible. Recycling is confusing these days. I think most people will agree with that statement. I was looking for a definitive resource, and this is what I found. I found that Judith Enck, who is a former regional administrator for the EPA under Barack Obama, and also the founder of Beyond Plastics, which is a 501c3 organization, taught a class at Bennington College. I was looking for an authoritative resource because I was spending, remember, I've made this my full-time job. I have time the way no ordinary person does to send emails, to make phone calls, to follow up. And what I was amazed that I found when I contacted companies and talked to the people whose whole job it was to talk to crazy people like me, calling up with weird questions, they didn't know the answers to my questions. They didn't know what was in the packaging that their food was covered in. They couldn't tell me what to do with anything. There's a lot of misinformation out there. There's a lot of disinformation out there. And I got conflicting answers. So that's why I was in search of, I need an authoritative resource who can tell me the real truth. What's really going on here? What's really happening with these materials? Is it really true nothing good can happen to these things? I signed up for the class, and I took it as a Zoom class in the fall of 2020. And I learned the truth about plastic. Remember, plastic is the Darth Vader for Year of No Garbage. And my focus became plastic, and I took the class about plastic, and I was looking for answers. I wanted to know the real truth, and I got it at last. And it was so much worse than I had ever suspected. What's wrong with plastic? Plastic is a miracle material. I think that's safe to say. We've invented plastic, and it does do all kinds of amazing things. When you ask people, what do you recycle? People name plastic more than any other material. So we're all trying. 85% of people, when asked, what do you recycle? Plastic is their answer. But how much really gets recycled in the category of plastics? 5%. That sounds bad. 95% of plastic is not getting recycled. Compare that to other materials. Paper and cardboard, 68%. Now we know that the industry has been trying to get us to recycle more and better. We hear it all the time. You're not doing it right. It's not clean. You didn't sort it properly. It's on us, right? We're doing it wrong. I don't think that's it. As it turns out, plastic is just not an inherently recyclable material. So, what's wrong with plastic? Number one, we know it is not getting recycled. Now that's the single stream stuff that I'm taking out to the corner of my driveway once a week, right? What about all those extreme programs? What about the Carton Council? What about plastic film recycling in the bin at the supermarket? What about TerraCycle? Well, the sad truth, as I learned it, is that nobody's watching and nobody really cares, right? TerraCycle, Trex, the supermarkets, the Carton Council. The Carton Council is an industry organization. They want people to feel good, right? Yay, it's being recycled. The crazy people like me, who are very few, who are going to go to all that trouble and bother to wash and dry and pack it up and pay with my own good money to send it across the country. So those cartons, okay, so they've humored me that something good is going to happen. And that's in their best interest, because then I'll be quiet, right? But the problem is that there's no reassurance. We have no reassurance that any of these programs are doing what they say. And that was borne out as time went on, and I started to see that TerraCycle was being sued. Walmart's being sued for their plastic film recycling. Then TerraCycle gets featured in an expose. Journalist finds bales of TerraCycle marked plastic that was meant to be recycled. And where is it? It's at a Bulgarian cement kiln waiting to be burned. So all of those people who washed and dried and sorted and packed it in a box and drove it to the store and paid good money for that box, they've done all of those things to have that happen to it? We're putting all our plastic into recycling. We're all trying very, very hard. It's been decades we've gotten this message. Just do it better, right? Just be a better, more responsible citizen and everything will be okay. But we know we're doing all those things and it's still not happening. 5% is the most that's being recycled in any way of plastic. So where does it go? It's got to go somewhere, right? And we know that China is not accepting it anymore. As of 2017 and Operation National Sword, here's where it's going. It's going to impoverished nations around the world that don't have the infrastructure to deal with it. So it ends up in places like a beach in Vietnam, the landscape of Kenya, the waterways of India, Malaysia, Myanmar. Children are playing in our intended recycling. Also Thailand. The movie that I highly, highly recommend you seek out and watch if you would like to learn more about this is The Story of Plastic. It came out in 2019. We watched it as part of the Beyond Plastics class. And what this tells me now is that plastic is a form of environmental racism. We also know that the places where plastic is made are cited in impoverished communities over and over again, and communities of color. So again, environmental racism. Whether it's fracking, whether it's the creation of those plastics themselves. Okay, so what's wrong with plastic? It's not getting recycled. and it fosters environmental racism. Also, it's overwhelming the natural environment. Plastics are being found everywhere that scientists care to look for them. In the environment, everywhere from the top of Mount Everest to the bottom of the Mariana Trench. We've got albatrosses who are feeding little bits of plastic to their babies. The babies are dying, the albatross are dying. Ocean garbage patches now occupy 40% of our oceans. That's horrifying. It's also important to point out there's not just one. There is an ocean garbage patch for every ocean on the planet now. So, plastic is not really getting recycled. It fosters environmental racism, and it's overwhelming the natural environment. But wait, there's more. Every step of plastic production contributes to climate change, to the extent that if plastic were a country, it would be the 5th largest producer of carbon emissions. So everything from extraction, which is fracking, to transport, refining, production, consumption, disposal, it's all a significant contributor to the emissions that cause climate change. So it's not getting recycled, it fosters environmental racism, it's overwhelming the natural environment, and it is a significant driver of climate change. Also, plastics, I think for a long time, many of us thought that plastics would eventually break down. Maybe it would take longer than a piece of cardboard. You put it in the environment and it'll eventually degrade. Well, plastics don't break down. They never break down. They only break up into microplastics. They retain their characteristics and they just get smaller and smaller and smaller. This is why scientists are finding microplastics in every aspect of the natural environment that they care to look, but they're also finding microplastics in every part of the human body that they look for. So they're finding them in our blood. They're finding them in our liver, lungs, in our poop, breast milk, placenta, and the poop of a newborn baby. So it's crossing the placenta barrier. So I love this. I appreciate the humor that microplastics has become part of the food pyramid. Perhaps some of you have heard the very distressing statistic that we're all eating 5 grams of microplastics every week. That's about the amount of plastic that's in a credit card. Okay, so we all, sitting in this room, have plastic in our bodies right now. One of the culprits that I want to caution you about is that when you take plastic and you heat it, it accelerates the shedding of both microplastics and toxic chemicals. So all of that, where does it go? If you're heating up a microwave dinner, it goes into your food, and that's how you're consuming it. So please, please, what I do is if I have something that comes in a plastic tray that I haven't been able to avoid, take it out and put it in a dish, a ceramic dish, and microwave it like that. But it's not just in the event of higher heat. Even at room temperature, plastic sheds toxic chemicals and microplastics. There's a famous, fairly recent study called the Danish water bottle study, where they took a brand new, washed but brand new athletic water bottle, the kind that most moms wouldn't think twice about giving their kids to take to soccer practice. PFAS. These are known endocrine disruptors. These are known carcinogens. These are known fertility inhibitors. This is really, really nasty stuff, and it's around all of our food. So we're starting to hear more about this now, which is very positive. It's a good development. I have to throw this in because my book is in this article. I highly encourage you to seek it out and read it because Elizabeth Colbert does a beautiful job talking about how plastics are poisoning us. So, it's not getting recycled. Fosters environmental racism. It's overwhelming the natural environment. It's a driver of climate change, and it is toxic and finding its way into our bodies. That's a lot. So you can see, I think, how our year of no garbage very gradually and then rapidly became focused on plastic. The plastic waste crisis is directly related to climate change, and I like to re-emphasize that because I think it's something that many people don't know or make that connection. I think it's very important that we talk about that. But I also think it's very important to understand that climate change and the natural environment, some people are not to be convinced by those aspects, but they might be convinced when you tell them this is about your own personal health, the health of your body and your children and your grandchildren, and whether or not you get to have grandchildren, because it is associated with infertility. I also like to point out to people, because this is not meant to be a big guilt fest, that the plastic waste crisis is not your individual fault, right? You did not ask for all of this plastic to be created. Every time I go to the supermarket, it seems to me there is more plastic there than there was the time before. Why do bananas need to be wrapped in a plastic bag? Why do avocados need a little tray to sit on and some plastic film to cover it? It's insane, and I don't know anybody who likes this development, right? The plastic industry, who is big oil, they will say there's a demand, it's a problem of demand. And I say, I don't think so. I don't think there's a big demand for more plastic. I don't think it's a demand problem. I think it's a supply problem. They're foisting it onto the market, and it has to find places to go. It's very cheap, it's very profitable, and this is what big oil would like to see happen as we all stop driving cars that use fossil fuel. This is their plan B. More plastic. And we can see from this chart how plastic production has ramped up and up and up. This is until fairly recently, and now we can see what they want to do next. It's just going to accelerate, unless somebody tells them no. Fortunately, we're seeing more about this in the media. I'd like to point out that what we did for our year of no garbage was all about personal responsibility. It was all about what can we do today in our household, right? And that's important. Personal responsibility is important, but it is not and cannot be the whole picture. It will not be enough. If everybody in this auditorium goes home tomorrow and buys a bamboo toothbrush, is not going to fix the plastic waste crisis, right? If everybody in the country went and bought a bamboo toothbrush, it would not fix the plastic waste crisis. We need more. So I do say, yes, for personal responsibility, do what you can. Do the things that you can do. When you have a choice, make the non-plastic choice. We see it all the time. Two products next to each other, and one's in plastic and one is not. Choose the not. Try to use refillables whenever you can. We got really fortunate. About 15-minute drive from our house, there's a dairy. We can bring the bottle. Now, that's a whole trip, driving 15 minutes there and 15 minutes back for one grocery, one product. We also get an ice cream sometimes. But it is, one more thing that we can do to reduce our plastic footprint, right? Also, don't heat plastics in the microwave or the dishwasher. If you have plastic that you use for maybe it's a Tupperware lid, wash it by hand. That will help. And it doesn't hurt. It never hurts. I've never gotten a bad reaction when I ask. I say, hey, I actually don't want the disposable cup that I now know is not only paper, but it's lined with plastic. I don't want my coffee swimming with microplastics, actually. So I don't say that. But I say, could I please have a real cup? I will drink it here. And that also leads into my next point, which is slowing down. Are we all in such a great hurry that we need to go rushing out the door every time we get a coffee? Or can we sit down and have it in a reusable cup? So I also say slow down when you're going to put something into the garbage can. Think to yourself, is there some other place this item could go? Some other person in the world who might appreciate it? I always like to point to the example of me putting on the local message board that I had this enormous collection of plastic bottle caps. And I immediately got a response. A Girl Scout troop took, like, I don't know, 300 plastic bottle caps, and they took it for a craft project. And I was like, see, that's what I mean. Like, if I had, I just needed to take the time to do that one thing. Beyond those things that we can personally do, we need, if we care about this issue, and I hope everybody does, to support legislative and corporate change. Now, as you can probably tell, I'm not real hopeful about the corporate part of that sentence. Corporate change, they've been given decades to deal with this problem. And it's not in their financial interest to do so. So they're not going to do it. And I guess I can't blame them. Instead, support legislative change. What does that look like? What does it mean? It means plastic bag bans, which we're lucky enough to have around here, which is great. Bottle return bills. The Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act, which has just been reintroduced in Congress. Call your congressperson. Tell them, I want you to support that bill. There's also the Global Plastics Treaty, which is currently being configured at the UN level. So this is global. These are hopeful things that are happening in the world about addressing the plastic waste crisis. But, I will caution you, because the plastics industry is onto us, and they are doing everything they can to subvert these efforts. And one of them, one of the most significant, is they have decided that burning plastic is recyclable. And they insert this into legislation that they are pushing forward. Now remember, you're talking about big oil, right? So unlimited budgets, unlimited, just squadrons of lobbyists go marching in and say, we really want to make sure that this, environmental legislation has waste to energy in it. Because waste to energy is so wonderful sounding, but in fact, it's a euphemism for burning plastic. So this is very sneaky stuff, and I think it's very difficult for the average person. Again, I made this my full-time job. No one else can do that or should do that, right? You shouldn't have to do it. So instead, I recommend, if you are curious, if you are not sure about a piece of legislation, or anything else for that matter, Beyond Plastics is a wonderful resource. They have a staff, they will respond to your questions, they are fantastic. They have a wonderful, very full and informing website that you can check out with all kinds of wonderful resources. And they will tell you, this is a good bill, this is a bad bill, this has chemical recycling, don't support it. And lastly, if you learned anything that you didn't know before tonight, go tell somebody. I firmly believe that awareness is super important, that it is the beginning of all meaningful change. That even if you don't change anything about your life today or tomorrow or next week, which you can, I'm not telling you not to change anything, but even if you don't, or you're not in a position to, you can tell people. And that is really important and valuable. Is life without plastic even possible? I don't think it's possible anytime in the foreseeable future, and I hate to say that, being now a confirmed plastic waste hater, and plastic being my Darth Vader. I don't want to stop driving my car or wearing my glasses or using my computer or talking on my phone. How do I do any of those things without plastic? These things aren't probably going away anytime soon. But what we do know is that 40% of the plastic produced every single year is single-use disposable plastic packaging. kind that comes around your cheese or your meat or your milk. Okay? This is the low-hanging fruit. In my opinion, I think this is the easiest place to start. We need to start reducing that first. So this is me with, we do throw things away again now. So this is a comparison before Year of No Garbage. We threw out 96 gallons without fail, religiously, every single week. And now we throw away 9 gallons. So this is great. I'm pleased. I'm proud. It's wonderful to know that that's a big difference. It's huge. All of that 9 gallons is single-use disposable plastic packaging from food that we have not figured out in our home how to stop bringing into our home yet. The upshot that I hope you'll take away from my book and this talk is that plastic is not our friend. We need to be very cautious. It's like one of those friends who, they kind of gossip behind your back, You need to be friends with them. Just know who they are, right? We need to make less of it, and we can. We need to use less of it, and we should. So that is my talk. I hope you will all follow me on any social media of your choice. I put a lot of very silly videos on TikTok. And I am very happy to answer any questions that people may have.